All right, next gear review. 1971 Marantz 2230. So there is a service series on this one. I'm not sure if it's been released. I believe it has been, but I'll be honest with you. I've got there's just a lot of stuff going on the channel in terms of videos and when they're going to be released, and if I did a gear review, and then if I've already released the service. So I think the service has been released on this, but I really don't know. Because this is going to be released about 3 months from now. So anyway, we have a 1971-ish vintage Marantz 2230. These were manufactured between 71 and 75. So this is a champagne, right? Champagne engraved face. So the face is engraved. It's not stamped or silk screened. It's got a really nice engraving, and the actual aluminum here, the metal, is has like a champagne hue. And if you're not aware, or if you're not familiar with Marantz, they can either be kind of a champagne-ish color, a goldish color, or just kind of a bright silver. So from what I understand, the champagne receivers, they were all manufactured around 1971. And I did a repair on a 2270 that was champagne. I think that's the only one that I've done. Seems like I've come across another 2270, but I don't think I shot a video on it. So anyway, 1971 to 75, cap coupled, 30 watts, right? And then, you saw the weight and the dimensions flashed up on the intro slides when they came up. So in terms of the series, right, 22 series or 22XX series, they came with or without cabinets. So this one has a really, really nice WC22 cabinet in fantastic shape. In terms of the model series, right, several different model numbers within the series. There was the 2215, the 2230 is seen here, 2245, and 2270. Now the 2230, and the reason why I have one is, and I've mentioned this before, I'm a capacitor coupled amplifier and receiver fan. This was Marantz's largest, in terms of wattage, capacitor coupled receiver. 30 watts per channel. That's as big as they got, from what I understand. This is different, however, than subsequent versions of the 2230. And when I'm talking about that, not all 2230s, but like the 2230B, that's a direct coupled receiver that's different, right? It's got a little slider bar in the middle for balance. Not the same creature by any stretch of the imagination. So in terms of the 2200 series, this to me is kind of the sweet spot. I have referenced a couple of other receivers, right, as kind of designating them as the best bang for the buck. The Pioneer 737, the Sony STR 6050 or 6060. Now that I listen to the 6060, I think that's a little bit better, and they're a little more expensive, but for what you get, it's a really, really, really good receiver. But I would put the Marantz 2230 in that same category. The sound quality, the build quality, what you can sometimes pick these up for. Now, there's a Marantz tax, and it's no joke, right? So if I were to take my Sony and compare it directly to this Marantz 2230, they're both 30 watts per channel. The build quality is exceptional. These are easily 4 to 5 to 6 times as expensive, right? Even in the wooden cabinet. If I had a Sony in the wooden cabinet and this in the wooden cabinet, 5 or 6 times as expensive. So classic Marantz, classic 2200 series. I think these are beautiful, absolutely beautiful receivers. As I mentioned, it's capacitor coupled, so it has that nice warm characteristic tube-ish or tube-like sound. 30 watts per channel. Operation, really easy to connect. components too, also super easy to use, right? As we kind of go through the functions pretty quickly, we have a tape monitor, mono, low and high filter, loudness contour, FM muting button. We have main and remote speakers, gyro touch tuning, right? And this is on, that's on phono, there's FM, right? So gyro touch tuning dial. AM, FM, phono, tape and auxiliary, bass, mid, and treble. I like having a mid. I don't know that it's real necessary. I don't think that's why, mid-level tone controls, they didn't last a long time. And I think that might be one reason. I just don't see the point in it. Treble, I mean, I can typically do whatever I need to do with treble and bass. Balance, volume, power button. Now, on some Marantzes, this has Phillips head screws holding the faceplate on. Some of these came with kind of hex screws. So it kind of depends on what model you're looking at and when it was manufactured. This has the gaudy, cool blue LEDs. I'm going to replace those. I initially bought this and was going to flip it. And the long story is this came in as a repair. Younger guy, got it at a really good price. Someone had gone in and attempted to replace the bulbs, broke the dial string. There were issues with it as referenced in the service video or the repair video. And, I gave him a price and he didn't want to pay that. And I said, well, I'll just buy it from you. And I paid him a fair price for it, I think, considering the condition it was in. It was market value for what I paid for it. And then, put a bunch of work into it, and here we have it. So initially I thought, well, I'll just kind of sell it, but I really, really like this receiver. I don't have it in the rotation right now, at least in an active rotation. I do listen to it occasionally. I'll throw it out for a week or two. But it's not something I pull off the shelf and listen to often. This is kind of one I just keep in the closet. I hate to say that. Right, so it has the ugly blue LEDs, and I'm probably going to go to incandescence, replace the vellum paper behind that, and if I do, maybe I'll shoot a video on it. But in terms of ease of operation, super easy to use, super easy to connect components to. Has the little push-in speaker terminals in the back. Now, one thing to notice, if you're looking for an older Marantz, and you don't know, you can't tell if the face was champagne or you can't tell how old it is, look at the color of the speaker terminals in the back. If they're red and black, that's a newer one. If they're all black, like on this one, it's an older model, and it's the chances are good it's going to be a champagne face. That's been my experience with these. I'm not saying all of the Marantz 2230s with black speaker terminals are going to be a champagne engraved face, but the chances improve. And I don't think any red and black terminal Marantz 2230s came with an engraved or champagne colored face. But I'm just going by my limited experience with these. So in terms of servicing one of these, though, I would say it's probably an entry level, or beginner, intermediate. I can't say there were any gotchas to this one. Now, you'll have to watch the video to see the inside of this. I remember complaining a little bit about accessibility of the amplifier board when I worked on that, because I did recap this. I think the power supply board was easy. I think the power amp board was the only one that really gave me fits, right? So in terms of, if you're a beginner, you might struggle a little bit on this, just getting everything, but I don't recall anything being too tricky beyond just getting to that one board. Some common issues with these. I have a video that I put up on, a couple of 2220s, I think maybe a model 26 or a 28, maybe even a 2230. I don't know, I've lost track on the channel. But it's common to come across these where one channel is distorted. And for some reason, the emitter resistors, and I think they were 0.24 ohm or they're 0.22 ohm. And then the modern replacement is the opposite of whatever I just said. Again, it's been a while. But those emitter resistors failing, that's kind of a common issue with these. I don't know why that is, but it is a common issue with these. So that may be what's causing that distortion if you encounter it on one. And then it's just kind of typical old amplifier or receiver issues like out of spec capacitors. I don't know of any known bad transistors on these. So like the top 10 worst transistors that I always reference. I don't know that this had any of those. But you can still have a failing transistor after, something's been in service off and on for 50 years. So it wouldn't surprise me if you have transistor issues on these. I just don't know that this has any of those shoot on site or replace on site transistors. Some of these will have FM multiplexing issues. I think that's kind of a more common issue on these. So you may not get stereo separation on these. This one, if I remember correctly, I don't remember if this one has that issue or not. Again, you'll have to watch the service video because I haven't touched this thing for probably 6 months. They do have a little bit of hum. I noticed a hum issue on some 2220s and 2230s. And I'll just call it kind of background hum, right? Kind of I don't know, it's kind of hard to describe, but they're maybe a little bit noisier than other receivers of the same vintage. But again, that may just be the models that I have encountered. So in terms of looking for one of these, if you were wanting to pick one of these up to try to rehab or get one at a good price, what are some things to look out for? Number one, if you're going for an engraved face, like I mentioned, look at the speaker terminal colors. You can tell in some of the photos whether or not it's engraved. You can look to see if it has hex or screw type. Now, I don't know if 2230s came with a screw type. That may be newer models like 2285Bs or something like that. But I would look at those. Make sure you have all of the little button caps in place. Knobs. Now, if you get one that's kind of a champagne hue, I think the knobs will be of the same color. There's consistency between the plate and the knobs. So if you put another knob on, you may notice a difference in the color. It may be more gold or it may be more silver or bright or white, I should say. Power button issues are common on these. Rectifier issues are common. So if you come across one without power, it can either be a bad power switch or a bad rectifier bridge. And I think on this one I had to replace that. If not, there was a 2220 or another 2230 about the same time where I had to do that too. So, and then naturally, if you get one with the cabinet, make sure the cabinet's in good shape. This cabinet is in pristine condition. Very, 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 very few flaws, and whatever flaws are on here, very minor. I'm just looking around to see, like, it doesn't have any chipping. The veneer's in really good shape. So, it's kind of the typical cosmetic stuff. Make sure the dial pointer's there. And I did add a little bit to my service video when I replaced the dial pointer with an aftermarket and how, it's okay. It's not the brightest, right? But what can you do at this point? Wait for an old one or spend way too much on, or wait for an old one and spend way too much on it, or get a modern replacement that's probably 3D printed that doesn't, right, really shine as brightly. It doesn't have as good of light transference, right, in the dial pointer. So those are the things that I would look out for. What's nice about these is they sell a ton. So I put together the information and I go by like a little tiny script here. But when I was putting things together a couple of weeks ago, between January and the first week of April, 45 of these had sold on eBay. 45. So they made a ton of them, right? So when you're talking about looking for these, talking about parts, you can typically find them. When you're looking at price for these, right, I always start out with kind of the restored, perfect condition. Naturally, you'll find people asking crazy amounts for these. Whether they're worth that or not is up to the buyer, ultimately, right? I would say if you get one in this condition, with everything working, and again, maybe I don't have FM multiplexing on this, but let's assume I have FM working on this. It's been recapped, it's been aligned, it's been adjusted. There are no issues with the cabinet. It works, it looks great, wonderful cosmetics, easily $1,000 or more. Easily $1,000 or more. Now, I'm not saying that you can't, wait and get one that is not going to cost quite as much, but be in almost as good a shape. You certainly can do that. But these will routinely sell for more than $1,000. In terms of getting one that's working, now maybe it's in really good shape and doesn't have the cabinet, because the cabinet's, worth a couple $100. Or maybe you have the cabinet and it might be, I don't know, maybe it's not engraved, it's not champagne. And by the way, I'm going by kind of an engraved champagne, right, face. This one would be worth a little bit more than $1,000 in my opinion. I'm certainly not selling it for less than $1,000. In fact, I'm not selling it at all. But to get one working, maybe without the cabinet, again, maybe not an engraved face, maybe you have to do a little bit of work to it, in terms of, maybe finding a knob or a button or something like that, or cleaning it up. Probably about $600, right? And again, that could be plus or minus 100 or two, based upon condition in the cabinet, if there is one. For parts, you can get these for parts for $300-ish. Typically, if you're gonna pick one of these up for $300 or less, it's not gonna have the cabinet. It's probably not gonna be in that great of condition. It's most certainly not gonna be an engraved face, or a champagne face, or one of the gold ones, right? You're probably gonna be missing stuff. It's gonna have distorted, output on one of the channels, or maybe FM is a multiplexing, or, any of the common problems. The dial pointer could be missing. $300 or less, you could probably find one. If you hold out long enough, you might have, actually be able to find one that's complete in terms of parts and things like that to work on. So at least that's kind of been my experience looking for these. And I always flash up some examples as I'm going through my description of these or my review of these receivers. So it's definitely a solid receiver. Definitely outpunches its weight. You're gonna pay the Marantz tax on it, but it's a classic. It's a classic 22 series Marantz. I personally feel. And I had a 2270 on a bench around the same time I had worked on this. And to my ears, this sounded better than the 2270. I'm just going to say it. But again, I'm a capacitor coupled guy. And I really like the warm, mellow sound. I'm not saying it's a better receiver. And it probably wouldn't be a better receiver for you. But to my ears, rather than spend $2,000 on a 2270, I would spend $1,000 on this, and I would probably enjoy it more. But again, that's just me. So I think that'll wrap it up for the review on the Marantz 2230. As always, if you like what you see, hit like, hit subscribe, and I will catch you in the next video.